Prince of Egypt. Just kidding. That was terrible.
Prince of Egypt. That was the animated movie with Patrick Stewart was the Pharaoh, right?
Yeah.
And Val Kilmer was Moses.
Yes, it was very strange, but oddly good. Like it was watchable. Just weird.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been better if it wasn't a musical.
Right. Wasn't he Masterminds? Was he
Yeah. He was the bad guy in Masterminds.
I liked him in Masterminds.
For me, I mean, Dune, of course.
Although
he was really good in Dune.
If we're talking about like his whole career,
Life Force.
My favorite role from him, period, is probably Waiting for Godot.
That was
from the theater.
Yeah.
He did it with I think it was Ian McKellen. He did it with, and they became best friends from that theater experience.
Yeah,
and it was really good.
I mean, he's done a lot of like Patrick Stewart is one of those guys who's like been all over. I mean, like what other actor besides like Daniel Day-Lewis do you know that could go from doing like a one-man performance of A Christmas Carol to being Captain of the Enterprise or Professor Xavier?
Shia LaBeouf. Who else?
Point taken. Point taken. Just do it.
Just do it.
Just do it.
Do it.
I mean, there's a few other guys out there that could probably do that too, but he's probably one of the best.
Sure.
What about you guys watching? We'll introduce ourselves in just a second, just in case you don't know who we are. But in the chat, I want to know what is your favorite movie that you've seen Patrick Stewart in outside of Star Trek.
With that being said, hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Riker Manuever. We just got done with a little best of Patrick Stewart.
We'll talk about Quentin Tarantino in a few.
Because, yeah, we actually got a lot of Star Trek news this week to the point where we actually had to make a live show about it. I'm Samuel Locke. Who are you?
I'm Josh, right?
Evil
Josh? Good Josh? Mirror Universe Josh?
Goldman.
Goldman. You know, it's like Hackman.
And today we're going to be talking about two different things specifically. We're going to be talking about Quentin Tarantino and his involvement in the new Star Trek movie as director, potentially. Well, not even potentially. I think it's...
Well, it looks like... So, yeah, it looks like it's a locked deal. From everything that we know, Quentin Tarantino has expressed interest in Star Trek multiple times in the past, and now he pitched an idea to J.J. Abrams. J.J. Abrams is like, dude, I'll help you make this. Now J.J. Abrams is putting together a writer's room for the movie, and Quentin Tarantino is going to direct. So it's going to be interesting because Quentin Tarantino isn't writing the movie.
Oh, that is interesting. That's really, really interesting. And the thing is, when I first heard the news, like it seemed like a just kidding.
Right. It seemed like, you know, someone was interviewing Quentin Tarantino and was like, oh, hey, I saw that you were a fan of Star Trek. And he was just like, yeah, you know, it would be cool if I got to direct it one day. But no,
and then like 2 days later, reality hits and it's an actual thing. And then not even maybe a day or two later, Patrick Stewart comes up and says, you know, I would totally be down to reprise Jean-Luc Picard, and Trekkies lost their freaking shit.
Right? Because, like, here's the thing. God. Well, I mean, not only did he say he would be down to bring back Jean-Luc Picard, but he said that he would be down to be Jean-Luc Picard in a Quentin Tarantino movie.
Yeah. Well, and because it is Quentin Tarantino.
Right. So, like that seems very interesting to me because I mean Quentin Tarantino has a history of working with interesting actors and not necessarily mainstream type people. Not that Patrick Stewart isn't mainstream.
I mean Kurt Russell's not mainstream,
but if you look at all of the movies that Quentin Tarantino has done, like have you seen Patrick Stewart in anything that fits that style?
Well, that's just it. Patrick Stewart doesn't have to fit a style. He doesn't have to. He never has. The thing is, you know, he did come to prominence with Star Trek TNG, and moving on, he was never the same person twice in anything he's done. I mean, whether you're looking at Family Guy, whether you're looking at American Dad, whether you're looking at Prince of Egypt, whether you're looking at The Green Room, where he's like a Nazi.
Yeah, or did you see that show that he was recently on
or Charles Xavier?
Stars?
Which one?
The
one where he's playing
the Blunt Report or something like that.
The news anchor, right?
Something like that, yeah.
Oh, yeah. It looks so funny.
I think it got canceled, but yeah.
So sad.
Like, it's interesting because, again, he's one of those guys who can go between being like a super serious guy and then be super doofy. And it's like, all right, because like I've seen him on like Jimmy Kimmel skits and like Family Guy.
He's a very classically trained actor, and you know the type of work he's done over 40 years, some crazy number. Like there's no way that I don't think I've ever seen him in a bad role. It doesn't exist. Bad movies maybe, but never itself a bad role.
Life Force.
I haven't seen it.
Oh, it's not great. Not great.
Wait, is he not great or is the movie not
The
great?
movie's not great.
Well, how is he in it?
I mean, he's Patrick Stewart.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
He himself is not a bad actor in any regards. He might be like a bad movie or two, but no one would ever say because of Patrick Stewart, it was bad.
Yeah, exactly. And just hold that thought for just a moment. I just want to go to the chat here and say hi to everyone. It looks like we got Ryan Thomas. Sorry, I'm not going to say your entire name. Don Juan, hey, how's it going? Kat and Anna Miles. How are you guys doing today? Ryan, there is going to be another Star Trek movie. Now, what we don't know is whether this is going to take the place of the fourth movie in the J.J. Kelvin timeline universe movies.
Here's the thing. Since Beyond, there hasn't been anything slated for the IP movie anything.
Well, no, that's not necessarily true. There has not been a date set for a fourth movie, but they did announce that they were talking with Chris Hemsworth about coming back to be George Kirk again in a time travel-based movie, and that he, of course, was interested in it because other than Thor, what's he really doing?
Well, that's just it. I'm not saying that they wouldn't, bring up another movie because it's at this point it's a multi-billion
right.
IP.
What I mean is like it was actively in development. The fourth movie in the series was actively in development.
And here's the thing: I think that this will be our fourth movie. I mean, it's already kind of being laid out, and I actually don't think that they'll follow the JJ timeline if they move with Quentin Tarantino. I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, granted, we've got Discovery, which is currently in the prime timeline, but the question is, once you go another 150 years into the future, does the timeline actually make a difference? Well, that is it. And when it comes to sci-fi Star Trek in general, even Gene Roddenberry himself said, we don't necessarily have to follow canon. One of the best parts about Star Trek is that it can be played in different universes, different timelines. Like he's not even married to canon as much as many people are. So I'm not entirely too worried about if they're going to follow a certain timeline. I do worry a little bit that my biggest thing is I don't care about canon all that much.
Right.
What I care about
I care about continuity, not canon. And even continuity, as long as it's addressed in one form or another, and it's not just like, oh, hey, look, Patrick Stewart is the captain in this movie as Jean-Luc Picard, and now it's Captain Pike, and there's no reason given for why that shift happened.
But
that bothers me a little bit. But as long as they give me a reason, they're like, oh, okay, he went over to captain another starship or got promoted or whatever.
My only problem is I don't even really care that much about continuity. I mean, granted, yes, technology should be the same. There should be what's the word? An outline of things that should exist because of IP. Right. But what I do care about is heart and soul. I need the heart and soul of Star Trek to be there, which is
exploration.
And if you watch Disco, I've made that argument in the past. But the thing is, with Quentin Tarantino, I think he will maintain a certain level of it. But of course, Quentin Tarantino being the auteur that he is, he's going to have a very specific designated direction that may not be part of the things we've seen before.
All right. So what would you think about a Star Trek movie that was done like something like Pulp Fiction or Reservoir Dogs?
I don't think it's going to be that way. I think it's going to be something completely different.
I don't know, because have you seen the episodes of CSI and Alias that he's directed?
I don't watch either.
So CSI, I never really, I never watched Alias, but I watched just because I like Quentin Tarantino. I watched the episodes of the TV shows that he's directed. I think he did a couple of episodes of the X-Files as well, but I didn't
one or two.
That show I didn't really watch. But the CSI episodes that I can actually remember that he did direct, they had that very Quentin Tarantino style that felt like Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction and Kill Bill. That very out of sorts, not necessarily linear storytelling.
But that's just it. I think that there's going to be a certain strength to. I know he's not writing, but for him to say I'm not going to write. Yeah, right. Okay, I'll believe that.
I mean, I'm sure he'll go in and have his say and rewrite and all that kind of stuff. Well,
here's the thing. His strengths are his dialogue is weird and different and amazing. And imagine putting his dialogue in scientific context. Oh, that's going to be so cool.
But see, on top of that, imagine a Kirk type person delivering that dialogue.
Sure.
Because Shatner was made to deliver I'm surprised Shatner has not been in a Quentin Tarantino movie.
I'm not entirely surprised. I mean,
because his level, his style of acting seems to fit with that kind of
I mean,
presentation.
It's definitely he does go above and beyond in how kind of human behavior acts and reacts.
Yeah, because it's all super exaggerated, or not. I don't want to say over the top, but it's very very stylized.
Right.
It's like a hyper real.
But that whole speaking in such a different way, the difference between Kirk and the Quentin Tarantino universe is that the entire universe does it. Like in Quentin Tarantino, it wouldn't be necessarily a distinctive thing for Kirk to just jump in there and do his thing, because everyone does it. It kind of loses its thing, and then what's it left with? So it kind of makes sense that he hasn't done one before with Quentin Tarantino. I want to come to because a lot of people are asking what should we expect from a Quentin Tarantino film about Star Trek, and he actually talks about it a little bit in a.
Well, let's talk about what we absolutely know for sure. Like we said before, he's not writing it; he's directing it. He is insisting on it being rated R, which it looks like has already been approved. That the movie can be rated R.
Thought it really good.
So we know that there's going to be quite a bit of like gore, and
curse,
violence,
sex,
and cursing.
violence. Yeah. Actually, how much?
Probably close-ups of people's feet for some reason.
Maybe some alien feet.
That's Tarantino has a thing for feet. Like,
I mean, it's
Death
2017. Who doesn't anymore?
What was it? Kill Bill. There is that long. We had that long shot on Uma Thurman's foot.
Sure.
And From Dusk Till Dawn, there is the long scene on Selma Hayek doing the like.
I mean,
every Quentin Tarantino
that was a
movie,
pretty
there's
memorable
foot
scene. I mean, the thing is, does he really even do sex scenes like like gratuitous sex scenes? I feel like
no. Tarantino actually I don't remember seeing like actual sex scenes in any Tarantino movies.
Yeah, like it doesn't, like if it serves a purpose, great.
Right.
But like there's nothing gratuitous about the things he does, which I actually appreciate really well.
Except some of the violence.
No, the violence is so gratuitous. Sans Django. Django makes all this sense.
Yeah.
But anyway, I want to bring it back a little bit. I know a lot of people are like wondering, what can we expect from Quentin Tarantino Star Trek film? And the thing is, they talked a little bit about it in 2015 with Nerdist on a podcast. And
what did he say?
So he said that he would want to get away from the multi-character story arcs of the reboot. So instead of following kind of a little bit of everyone, kind of like we're used to in the series, kind of like we're used to in the movies, it's gonna possibly, I'm not saying verifying anything, but it's possible that he could be following just one or two people the entire time. And then on top of that, he embraces certain story arcs of Star Trek, and one of his kind of favorite stuff is stuff that deals with time. So probably a time travel episode. It could be an extended time travel episode. Ones he's actually referred to are City on the Edge of Forever and Yesterday's Enterprise.
I mean, City on the Edge of Forever is probably one of Star Trek's best episodes as far as ratings go. Like, everyone absolutely loved that episode. What's interesting is that City on the Edge of Forever was written by Harlan Ellison, I believe. Not Harlan Williams. Harlan Williams is the Rocket Man guy. Harlan Ellison, who's a prolific sci-fi writer. And the original script for it was so far over budget that they had to cut so much out of that episode. I want to say that the original, that based off of his screenplay for it, the budget would have been like, back then, $150,000.
And for those who don't quite know what these episodes...
I think they had to cut it down to 70?
Something of the nature. And for those who don't know what these two particular episodes are, with The Edge of Forever, there was an OD involved, and then Dr. McCoy goes back in time and changes history because of it, and then Kirk and Spock have to restore the events the way they were. And then for Yesterday's Enterprise, it was about the Enterprise changing the timeline where the Federation is in war with the Klingon Empire.
That's the one where Tasha Yar came back, right?
Yeah. That was and it was a decent episode.
Yeah, that one was pretty good. City on the Edge of Forever is also the one that gave us The Guardian.
Right. And so when I look at these, and I'm kind of worried in the sense of they kind of played with this already in the first reboot, where it's like, hey, we changed everything. And if he tends to want to kind of expand this idea of like time travel where things are here, but now things are there, you're going to need a lot of exposition for people who don't know what's going on,
right?
To work with.
Well, I think like the JJ reboot in this Kelvin timeline was the first big change as far as like time travel stories goes, where it's like, okay, these changes are now permanent. Because if you look at any other time travel episode within the Star Trek series, minimal changes, like, you know, in DS9 there was like, oh hey, look, here's a picture of Sisko as this guy that he replaced back in the 21st century, or you know, the Klingon thing with the Trouble with Tribbles episode on DS9, or the Yesterday's Enterprise where Tasha Yar went back to being dead at the end, except for the fact that now we had her daughter that was a Romulan. You know what would be really fun? And I could see Quentin Tarantino totally pulling this off because he's all about characters. And my thought is, who's like the best character we know that would fit best in the Quentin universe? Q. Yeah, Q actually would be good for a movie.
Yes, he would. Q in a movie with Quentin Tarantino directing. Oh my God, that could be brilliant. Actually, and there would be a lot of time things that they could totally work with that.
Based off of that conversation from that podcast and thinking about Q, there was a book series that came out a few years ago called Q Strike, maybe? I don't remember. It was a trilogy. And something happens, and Q ended up taking Picard on this whole thing throughout time.
Yeah, that was actually similar to an episode they did on TNG where I think it was Riker, Power of Q, where he was like showing them, you know, where he can go in the universe.
No. So this one, like, imagine like all the unexplained phenomena that happen within the Star Trek universe. This series kind of explained that. So, sorry, I'm gonna spoil this for you. It's a 20-year-old book, but Q took Picard because the Enterprise was on the verge of breaking through the galactic barrier, which, you know, is that big energy field that prevents us from getting out of the Milky Way galaxy. So the barrier is there because the Q Continuum set it up to prevent an evil being from getting into the Milky Way galaxy that Q had accidentally released through the Guardian of Forever. So he's taking Picard through time to show him why he has such an affinity for the human race, why he does all the things that he does, and in the process explains where the giant godhead thing from Star Trek V came from, why the energy barrier is there, who I think the Traveler was. Like, all this different stuff was, I mean, it's not canon, but that kind of a storyline with Q and Picard just like on this like random trip through time trying to fix all of this stuff, I'd be down for that.
That would be super cool. That's the thing. When he says he wants to look at the time travel episodes, that could also mean the books too.
Right.
Like, one thing I'm really interested in is that reading through some of the history of the Borg the other day, I actually come to find that the Q fear the Borg. And I'm not entirely sure why. Like, it was because it was only mentioned in DS9 like once, where there was a Q episode and they were like, you know, don't tempt the Borg or some shit like that. He only said it once, but I'm like, why is the Q like that can move time, space, and distance afraid of the Borg? And it would be really interesting if like maybe a Q got captured by the Borg, and, you know, because of that, you know, the Borg, you know, Q knowledge is in the Borg collective.
Right.
I would love to see something like that.
That would be
awesome.
But see, here's the question then: could a Q be assimilated?
I mean, I don't see why not. The thing is, the only thing we really know about Q is that it's technically humanoid, but also technically somewhat of a pure energy source thing.
Right.
And so if the Borg can find a way to build a collective device that can capture that type of energy, I don't see why they wouldn't be able to capture a Borg. Or a Q.
Yeah. I don't know. That's an interesting. We'll have to
do some research.
Yeah, we'll have to find like Brandon Braga somewhere and be like, hey, so here's what we want to know.
Yes, can the Borg capture a Q? Ooh, buddy, can we get that episode? That'd be a great episode.
That'd be super interesting. But so to give us a little bit of an idea about what the actual script for it might be like, let's take a look at the guy who's actually writing it, who is Mark L. Smith.
Don 1 says, don't provoke the Borg. That's what it was. So Q said to his son during a Voyager episode. So I was a little mixed up on the reference.
Well, because Q is the one that introduced our galaxy basically to, well, not our galaxy, but he introduced the Enterprise to
they
the
introduced
Borg.
the Borg. Yeah, they said, we're going to pick you up, put you here. This is what you're going to be dealing with if you don't, you know.
Yeah, well, basically his thing was, oh, you think you're ready to explore the universe?
These people exist.
Let's see if you're ready. And, you know, this is like, whoop, and then they get flung like 7,000 light years.
That was such
an
awesome episode. Oh, man.
That was good, because then we also got a little bit more backstory on Guinan. That you know, it would be interesting to see her come back too.
Yes, and again, interesting harking back to the Borg, like in the Q, like apparently, like even in that very first or second episode at that point, like they were like, you think you're great? We know these people suck. They knew it early, like the earliest on, and maybe there's like a whole history that we don't even know about between the Q and the Borg. And I would love to.
I mean, now, like, you know, after Voyager, who knows what's going on with the Q continuum, because they had that Civil War, and like now they're having babies and just all kind of like
all sorts of weird things.
Yeah, I was not a fan of what Voyager did with the Q. Like that whole thing was just weird. But like, I still think that would be interesting to learn more about the Q as a whole, because they, you know, we know that they also have their own version of the Prime Directive that they're supposed to live by, that Q breaks all the time.
Right. And I know we've gotten kind of off topic.
Yeah,
we've gotten completely off topic in this. We're gonna
go back. Yeah. Let's go back to the screenwriter. So the screenwriter who's currently being looked at, not confirmed yet, his name is Mark L. Smith. The most famous thing that he's done that probably most people would know about is The Revenant. He wrote the screenplay for that. The recent movie with
the bear rapist.
Yeah, the bear thing. Yeah.
I don't, you know.
He also wrote a couple of horror movies, Vacancy and Seance.
Oh, I know Vacancy.
So he has a very dark style.
Do you think it's gonna be like? Do you think it might end up as like a horror movie? Maybe.
I mean, it very well could. Like, imagine.
What's his name again?
Mark L. Smith.
Mark L. Smith. I'm gonna look him up real quick.
Like if you know, they went up against some kind of alien race that was
harvesting
like
humans.
Yeah.
Or harvesting other aliens, or doing something of that nature.
You know, like, I mean, they could easily also bring back, like, the Iconians.
He did the whole. Okay, I'm not worried anymore. I'm not worried at all.
See, I don't know the whole. I know Vacancy and Seance, but I don't know the whole.
The whole is a really weird. It's a very strange movie. If it's the whole that I'm thinking of, there might be more than one whole, but.
And Bruce Dern was in it.
Oh yeah, okay. So
we know that he works with Quentin Tarantino.
So the whole is about these kids who literally find a hole, and it kind of goes into this weird Tim Burton like fever dream dimension type of thing. And if he puts even remotely anything that I saw in the hole,
is it anything like The Gate?
It might be inspired by The Gate, but I wouldn't necessarily call it like a Gate remake or anything of the nature.
Okay.
But like the whole it was just so weird. It was and it was good weird. It was whoever designed it was amazing. And I'm hoping that if he brings like the weird abstract ideas from the whole into Star Trek, I'm just fine. Like I'm like the kind of things he makes if you're telling him go off to a weird tangent of space, it could be really cool. Like actually, and I'm not worried anymore. No, I don't think it'd be a horror film. I think it'll be. With Quentin Tarantino wanting to do time, this guy writing from the whole, it could become a really abstract piece.
Yeah, which could be like super. Which, you know, time travel. This guy writing it, and Quentin Tarantino's like non-linear storytelling techniques.
Yeah,
I mean that could be super.
It could be some like interstellar level storytelling.
What up, Jezzer?
Why hello? And between Quentin Tarantino and Mr. Jean-Luc Picard coming back, I think that because the thing is when we brought the JJ universe in, just like Disco, it freaked out a bunch of old school Trekkies, and you know a lot of people got turned off. But
I mean, you have to look at that with the same kind of grain of salt that you have to look at anything when you hear people complaining about stuff. Is it a majority of people? Is it a lot of people, or is it just, you know, those few people that scream the loudest over top of everyone else?
Well, you're talking about. about 60 years of fandom here, and which is the longest fandom. Like Star Trek started the idea and concept of it.
Doctor Who started before Star Trek did.
Yeah, but it wasn't like an international appeal until Star Trek became a thing. And the thing is, because they're the oldest and the whatever you want, the most superlative of
probably
fandoms,
probably one of the best well known of the older
because of that, they're the most rabid, crazy fan. You guys are. You guys are
I don't know. Star Wars people are pretty out there too.
You know,
and you know, you can't discount the Power Rangers fans. You know, the Power Rangers fans are a huge fandom in themselves.
Well, they're fandoms, but it's how they work within their communities. The thing is, you have people who are coming into the communities and people who've been there forever. And how you treat the people who just joined your communities is kind of the way you can gauge them as a whole. And the thing is, Star Trek people, they are completely unforgiving in terms of like, oh, you think you're a Star Trek fan? Do you know this? No, go fuck yourself. You know, they're very militant. And the thing is,
yeah, I mean, still, I say that's like anyone who's like extreme fans, like Marvel, like comics, like comic book nerds.
Oh, they're bad.
Not that I'm not a comic book nerd,
they're
but
bad
it's
too.
Like they're all the same. It's just
but with
different areas.
With Star Wars, all you have to do is say the first 3 suck, and you're in. That's all you got to do.
But like, I think what it is depending on like Star Trek and Star Wars are obviously the most mainstream of the fandoms that are out there that where people, because I mean Saturday Night Live lampoons, you know, Star Trek fans, you know, like that's where the William Shatner Get a Life, you know, came from.
Right.
So I think one of the things with it is just that it's such a well-known franchise for everyone that's where a lot of that comes from.
Sure. And okay, here's an interesting question. Let's say Quentin, like he's gonna make this movie, and maybe he makes a new timeline, maybe he doesn't. But if it's gonna be a hit, and it's gonna be because Quentin Tarantino's never made a bad movie in his life, do you see him heading the movies at that point? Do you see him like Joss Whedoning this stuff and just becoming the
I don't think Quentin Tarantino would want to be that guy.
Well, I don't know. The thing is, he might be, and I know he doesn't.
Look at like he doesn't like the only sequel that he's made is Kill Bill Volume 2.
Sure, no, I'm saying,
and that wasn't even really a sequel. The only reason it was a sequel was because he couldn't fit all that into one movie and have people sit there through it.
The thing is, I realize he's against sequels, but that's just it. Star Wars has never been a sequel thing. The thing is, it's always been episodic. The thing is, he could look at it in the terms of, well, this is an episodic. We can do this story. And then the next movie is completely different, maybe with completely new timeline character.
I don't see him wanting to take the time away from the other original works that he wants to do to head up Star Trek for the foreseeable future.
That's just it. I think that if he does a great job with this Star Trek, I think that he would end up doing at least 2 or 3 more, and that's just because he can look at it as a serialized aspect rather than having to do sequel upon sequel like everyone else does.
Maybe.
And here's the kicker with that.
Like maybe if like when as they're developing this, if he's like, I want to make this a trilogy and it's just one large arc, I could see that. But I couldn't see him just being like, okay, I'm going to be the guy that does Star Trek from here until I decide not to.
Well, that's just it. I think that if 2 things can happen here, which I think would be amazing. If he said, I want to do this, but I want to serialize this to where it's not connected in any way, shape, or form, it becomes an experimental ground. Because the thing is, everyone knows, like at this point, every trilogy, every series, with the exception of maybe James Bond, every movie is, here's the beginning, here's the middle, and here's the end. The idea of having a serialized Star Trek, kind of like it was almost in the 90s, pretty much.
Well, I mean, most of the movies have been serialized, though.
Exactly. I think he wants to go back to that.
I mean, we're still there.
No,
more or less.
Not exactly. Here's the thing. The J.J. Abrams verse still feels a little arcish in terms of the storyline. If you,
I don't know, Beyond didn't really tie into the Wrath of Khan Part 2. Wrath of Khan minimally tied into the first movie, but each movie was its own separate thing in itself. Like there weren't, like, I feel like you could watch those movies on their own and just have someone tell you, okay, these are Star Trek movies.
But that's
okay.
The thing is, we still, even with the 90s and everything else, we still had the same characters that we follow and everything else. I would love to see, like, brand new ships, brand new like timelines, brand new people. We
don't
have
for
to.
sure.
That's what I'm saying. We don't have to stick to that level of canon. We could sit there and really make a new, almost like a new IP, virtually every single thing. I could see that.
People see that people are gonna. People would. You think people don't like Discovery? People would not go for like the Star Trek fandom. But
that's what I'm saying. It would be that level of experimental.
But
amazing.
The only Star Trek films that have been like had that arc, realistically, were 2, 3, and 4. Because with 2 was the Wrath of Khan, so where Spock died.
Yep.
3 was the Search for Spock, so it picked up pretty much where Wrath of Khan left off with Spock growing up on the Genesis planet. And then by the end of 3, the ship was destroyed, and they had the new Klingon bird of prey, which was when they were traveling back to Earth, and 4, which they used to take back to time to save the sperm whales or the humpback whales.
Right.
So, but then after 4, you had the
Generations.
No. After 4 was 5, which was the one with the search for God thing, with Spock's brother Sybok. 6 was the Undiscovered Country. Then 7 was Generations.
Right.
Which wasn't tied into any of those. 8 was First Contact, which had absolutely nothing to do with Generations.
And then
First
9, Contact, then Nemesis. No.
Well, first Contact was 8. Insurrection was 9, which again wasn't tied into the one before that.
Right.
And then Nemesis, which again wasn't tied into any of the previous ones. So it was really just those 3 in the TOS era.
When I say tie into blah blah blah, I'm literally referring to characters. The thing is, I would love to see new characters. I want to see new ships. I want to see new timelines.
So you don't mean serialized in that way. You just mean like more like an anthology.
Yeah, I would love to see an anthologic series that Quentin Tarantino heads up. That would be god tier amazing.
See, that makes a little bit more sense from that point of view. Okay, this one is the Enterprise. This one maybe we're gonna look at the Discovery.
Yeah,
part 3. The third Discovery.
Essentially, I want them to James Bond that shit, even without James Bond. Like I want. Like it's in that world.
Yeah, you want an anthology, different characters. So not all of them follow Picard, not all of them follow Kirk.
A Star Wars anthology would change the game in such a way.
Star Trek, you're gonna piss people off.
Yeah, Star Trek. It would be a change of the game so crazy that I feel like a lot of old school people like, well, let's see where this goes, and a lot of new people like, let's see what. Like everyone would be like, let's see where this goes, and that's what I'd love to see from Quentin Tarantino because I think he could do it.
That could be interesting. I personally, what I would like to see would be something that takes place current day for Star Trek, not like this current day, but post Dominion War, after Voyager. We could see Picard come back as like an admiral, like maybe in the same way Kirk came back to.
We still got to decide what
to do a ship. Like what I would like to see is. Picard comes back to take on some like mission where like maybe again not First Contact like First Contact was, but First Contact with a new alien race that's maybe like way more powerful than the Federation, and then everything just turns to shit. Like so
Disco.
So no, because like with Disco we have the Klingons where we're familiar with the Klingons. Like they hadn't seen the Klingons in 100 years, but they were familiar with the species. They know everything about it. This I could see more as like a V type scenario where like this new alien race comes in. They're like, hey, we're from the Pegasus Galaxy. We want to be your friends. And then they don't.
That would be interesting. And then, but the thing is, if you bring back Jean-Luc, it's very possible you can bring Q in that too.
You could. You could also bring back Riker.
I would. Oh God, I'd love to have Riker.
Which would be great.
Please. Yeah, no, like
just because you bring back Jean-Luc Picard doesn't mean that's because Q has had interactions with all of them. He's had, except for the TOS, he's had interactions with Picard. He interacted with Sisko for like 1 or 2 episodes. He was on DS9 and he was on Voyager. So like. You could do anything. You literally, like Q, in theory, could show up on Discovery, and
That it couldn't.
Like, I wouldn't want to see him there just because
it couldn't, because up until like in TNG, it's the first time they've actually even encountered the idea of the Q.
There's rumors that Trelane was a Q, so just because he doesn't announce himself as a Q, or it's like that's one of those things.
I mean,
that's
come on,
just like
rumors are bullshit. The thing is, like, you wouldn't be like, you couldn't introduce Q in the disco.
You couldn't know that he was a Q, but he could be there.
Yeah, but then you'd have
or they could do one of those stupid things where by the end of the episode everyone has their memories erased. There are so many ways that they could bring him.
I mean,
in.
they're gonna do that with Michael anyway. Like by the end of the first season, they're gonna sit there and go, "Well, you help out, so we're gonna expunge your record," which will help rectify TNG when they say there's been no mutineers.
Oh, that wasn't TNG.
Oh no,
TOS. That was TOS.
Yeah,
but I believe Spock just said none on record. He didn't actually say that there weren't any. He just said none on record.
Right. In which case, like I said, they're just going to expunge her, and then, you know.
But I mean, they have to do more than that, because they have to explain why Spock doesn't know that he has a sister. Or why he never referenced her.
Maybe that's why he says on record. In which case, that it still would kind of make sense if they.
There's a lot of things that they have to tie up. So, you know,
things and stuff. And
yeah.
Jack. Oh, what else is there left to talk about in this particular thing here?
Well, I mean, that's really about all the news we have. I mean, there is a new movie for general Star Trek news. It's not necessarily Star Trek per se, but
it's in the universe.
No. There's a movie that Jonathan Frakes is in on IFC. Called Devil's Gate. It's a horror movie, and there are a few...
Why do I feel like I've heard of that recently?
Because I sent you a thing about it.
Right.
In addition to Jonathan Frakes, Milo Ventimiglia, Sean Ashmore is in it. And it's coming out on January 5th.
It's already got ratings.
Yeah, it looks interesting. I know screeners have been going out for it. I'm trying to get us one.
I got a 4.0 on IMDb, but I still kind of want to watch it. Just because it's got Jonathan Frakes. I will watch anything with him in it. But for those who don't know, set in the small town of Devil's Gate, North Dakota, examines the disappearance of a local woman and her young son. And then, yeah. I mean,
It looks interesting. I didn't say it looks good. I said it looks interesting. Because I'm assuming, as an IFC Midnight movie, it's probably going to look a lot like a... sci-fi original movie.
I don't know. When it comes to horror movies, I'm just kind of over them. I mean, in the sense where it's like, I feel there's just nothing new left in the horror genre. I can't. I mean, when there is, I'm it's amazing. Like Cabin in the Woods was probably the most.
It's gonna.
I mean, cinematically, it looks interesting. I mean, he's got a full beard in it.
Well, I mean, he's always been a director. The thing is, he's directed so many. Like, he's a big director producer in terms of sci-fi and horror. If you look
TV, he does a lot of TV.
Yeah, he does a lot of TV, and you can look up his credits. Just to do that, he's got a nickname of Two Take Frank, which I'm not entirely sure why, but yeah, no, he's definitely an interesting person in terms of like Hollywood, who's who. But yeah, I mean, I'll watch it and I'll rate it. And
what about, have you seen any of the spots for the Black Mirror episode that's kind of sending up Star Trek?
I can't wait for Black Mirror to come out.
Well, I mean, that has an official release date.
Yes,
it's December 29th. So for those of you watching that are interested in other sci-fi stuff outside of Star Trek, or you Power Rangers guys that are in there, or you Kamen Rider guys, we are going to be doing a special one-off episode on Black Mirror. I've got to catch up because I haven't seen most. Like, I've seen like episodes here and there, but I haven't actually like watched all of them all the way through.
Have you seen the Future Man?
Yeah. Did you watch it?
I haven't watched it yet. I keep seeing it everywhere. Is it any good?
All right. So, Future Man, just at this point, guys, I think we're going to move off of Star Trek. If that's cool, because
yeah, we've already covered it, so we're going to cover other stuff.
We covered the news that we were talking about. So, just to talk about other things really quick that are coming up for us. Future Man was something that I talked about when we were looking at other properties, and it's a comedic sci-fi show on Hulu from the mind of Seth Rogen, starring Josh Hutcherson, and there's a few other random people that make appearances in it, like Ed Bakley Jr. But it's weird. It's funny, but it's not what I was expecting it to be. Do you remember? Do you know like the old Sierra point and click like adventure games?
Yes.
Did you ever play King's Quest?
Vaguely.
So they had another series called Space Quest. The main character in Space Quest was a janitor that had to go around on.
I remember that he was a big brain, right? And
no. He was just like a doofy.
Yeah, he was
janitor.
He was a doofy dude. He was like a janitor, and then he was like trying to fix like some mechanical stuff, and then he just like runs into this brain.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah.
And I mean, there were like 5 different games,
and the brain was like, someday I'm gonna. He's like rule the world, and he's like.
Yeah,
I remember that. I love that one. That was so funny.
So that's what I was expecting from Future Man, because it was like this janitor has to travel through time to save the future. And I was like, all right, that's going to be cool. And I'm watching it, and I'm like, all right, this is basically the plot line is David Keith, who voiced Goliath in Gargoyles. He voiced Spawn. He was in the Pitch Black movies. They Live, which is probably one of my favorite sci-fi movies. He runs a
Plan 9 from Outer Space, isn't?
He runs a pharmaceutical company, and he's trying to find a cure for herpes because he got herpes when he was in college. He finds the cure for herpes, and in doing so, finds the cure for like every disease known to man.
Okay.
And in the future, there's 2 sects of people who sects. SECTS, not SEX.
Fair enough.
And one of them, they don't want to take the cure because they think it's going to do
Gotcha,
weird
vaccine
shit to them.
autism types.
Exactly. And then there's the people who are taking it. And throughout the course of the TV show, it's like, okay, the rebellion who's fighting these people that are trying to force everyone to take the cure, and they're bad. But then you find out that maybe they're not so bad and that they're just like everyone else. And so it's just kind of weird. And then there's like, they get trapped in the 80s for a little while, and there's a Back to the Future thing where Josh Hutcherson almost hooks up with his mom. It's just, it's weird. Like I would recommend it, but only if you're like, right. I've watched everything else. I think I'll give this a watch.
Tell you what, let's wrap this up a little early. Where can we find you?
You can find me right here at our studio, behind the camera, doing things for that hashtag show. You can find me on the Twitter at the Goldman. It's Goldman. You can find me on Instagram if you really want to. It's the Goldman, no apostrophe. I don't really post there though. And that's really about it. You'll be able to find me at random conventions throughout the year. Cool. What about you?
You can find me right here at the Riker Manuever on a weekly basis. You can find me also at Slammy Sammy Lock on the Twitters. You can find me there at Slammy Sammy Lock on the Instagrams. You can find me at Steam Bunny Productions. I just recently put out a documentary for a nonprofit organization. You should check it out. I'm also working as a director at a Star Wars fan fiction thing called Season Deliver. You can find that on Twitter. We're currently in pre-production. And yeah. Next week, we'll be talking about best sci-fi stuff of 2017 and talking about what we anticipate for 2018.
Yeah, that probably won't be a Riker Maneuver thing though, but it'll be here.
It'll be a sci-fi thing.
Yeah, it'll be here. And I guess that's gonna do it for us for this week. We'll see you guys later in the week. Make sure you subscribe to us here at Pop Culture Renegades. Check over at that hashtag show for all of your comics and exclusive character breakdowns. We've got some big stuff coming out this week. And check out Kamen Rider Corner. They go on right before us.
Wow.
Check you guys later.
Later, Trekkies.